faith in the Bible doesn't make the Bible true. There is something in our religions that makes it true. There is evidence that God leaves us that will give us the undeniable evidence and a consistency in reality that will make it true to us. And here's what Romans 1, verses 18 through 20 says. It says that we all know God exists, but we suppress the truth in unrighteousness. In other words, we ignore God's truth, the true truth of the one and only true God, but we suppress it. In other words, we kind of put our ears on our fingers in our ears and go, la, 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 I'm not going to listen to you. And then we suppress the truth of unrighteousness. But then it says something very interesting. It says that God has shown it to us through his invisible attributes and through his Godhead. We know that he does truly exist, and we can know which God it is. So you have to look at reality, you have to look at history, you have to look at the construction of various religions, and you have to come up with the conclusion, yes, this God does exist, and he governs the universe. Now, if there isn't one God who governs the universe, then here's the scary part, Felix. We can't know what anything is. Now, you were just talking about, well, we initially follow the Ten Commandments. Well, not all people follow the Ten Commandments. In fact, some religions have a different Ten Commandments. So, which one do you follow? In other words, do you follow Mother Teresa or do you follow Hitler? Do you follow Stalin or do you follow Mussolini? Or which moral standard do you follow? Because everybody's got their own straight away, they walk away from God or they join another religion. There's actually a religion out there, believe it or not, called the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
That's the Pastafarians.
And they literally...
they're called Pastafarians.
Well, why couldn't they be true? If they have faith in it, why couldn't they believe in the Flying Spaghetti Monster? What would prevent somebody from saying, well, you can't do that. That's not the true God. And if you believe in that God, you will be damned forever. You see, nobody can say that, because if all roads lead to God, Felix, then everything is permissible. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Hinduism. Hinduism, believe it or not, does not have a food shortage. They don't. They do not have a food shortage in India. But when you go to that country, you'll notice that little children are starving to death. Why? Because they believe that the cows and the rats are gods and ancestors, and they worship them by giving them whatever food they have to those cows and rats. Now, me and you, Felix and Mark, would all say, well, that's immoral. That's terrible. Why would you starve a child and not kill the cow and eat the cow? Well, in their religion, they believe that you don't kill cows. They're sacred. And in fact, if a person dies, it's better a person dies than a cow. That's their philosophy. But it comes from their religion, Felix. Mm-hmm. So the problem that I have believing that all roads lead to God is then that means I would have to accept Hinduism as a legitimate way to believe in God. No, I would argue if you're a Hindu and you believe in such a thing, you're damned. Not because of my opinion and because I think it's cruel. It's because God thinks it's cruel. The only God who exists, the Holy God, the Trinity, the one who is called Yahweh, Yeshua, and the Holy Spirit, he is the one who says things are right and wrong. So you got a moral issue even more than that. You got a spiritual issue. You can't know what's right and wrong. You can't know what's good and bad. You don't know what's cruel and kind, because all people from all walks of life, Felix, as you know, do different things. Now, let's take the Canaanites. The Canaanites worshipped Molech. He was a owl or a bull-headed god who had hot irons for hands. And what they would do with the statue is they would fire them up with fire underneath the furnace of hot iron. And they would take their little babies, little children, and they would place it on Moloch's hands because they believed this is the God who gave them prosperity. So, if I believed all roads lead to God, there's no unpermissible religion out there, then I have to believe that God, this whatever God we're all leading to, allows such acts. No, I would say he doesn't. As soon as you open your mouth, Felix, and you say, well, burning children alive is bad, then you have put a standard of right and wrong that comes from somewhere. Otherwise, you have no right to go into any civilization where there's starving children, raping children, burning children alive, and say that it's wrong. Because the reality is, if you believe all roads lead to God, then what the Canaanites did was perfectly permissible. I refuse to believe that. I believe in a God who said, if you harm any child or make them stumble, it would be better for you to put a millstone on your neck and be plunged into the waters than for you to be judged on Judgment Day. So God takes children very seriously in a loving manner, but Moloch, the God, does not. So which one is it? Do we believe in the God?
Is this a modern day Moloch? Modern day? This is in the past. This is not happening now.
Well, of course, because God the Father destroyed the civilization who was creating this false God. And he doesn't exist because he's a false God. But the question, Felix, becomes, how do I know that it would be Moloch to follow instead of Yahweh? How do I know I should follow Hindu rather than Christianity? How do I know to follow Judaism rather than Islam? Which one do you choose?
When the explorers came to the New World, when they came to Mexico, the Mayans, the Incas, and they saw that they were conducting human sacrifice, which is what you're alluding to.
Yes.
For hundreds of years, it worked for the natives, based upon...
Oh, so it's good to do then.
Excuse me?
But it wouldn't be good to do. It would be an evil thing to do that.
Well, that's why when when priests came over to the new country and they were trying to convert, I guess the heathen supposedly, they were trying to tell them that this is wrong, that there is no such thing as human sacrifice, that human sacrifice has nothing to do with whether they're going to have good crops or bad crops, and try to get them to accept the word of Jesus. Because, all of the religious people who came over were trying to convert all the missionaries were trying to convert the natives to Christianity.
Okay.
We're talking about the Aztecs, basically?
Yeah.
And what happened to them?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the Aztecs, but what are you saying, Mark? You're saying that was it good or bad for missionaries to wanting to see the conversion of paganism and barbaric behavior?
Well, it was like the Greek or Roman gods, when they used to have sacrifices to to Zeus or to the other gods. Originally Christianity was showing them that was wrong, that the true God was Jesus. That's why that's why the Romans hunted the Christians, and they blamed the Christians for everything that was going wrong.
Right. Well, you're talking about, under the leadership of Caesar Nero, he blamed the Christians for, actually, he's the one who set the city of Rome on fire.
Right.
But he actually blamed the Christians, and they were slaughtered by the hundreds.
He blamed the Christians, and that's why the people were up in arms against Christianity. One of the reasons, anyway.
Yeah, so let me ask you guys this question. Do you guys understand I really want you to get this. Do you understand the danger in believing that all roads lead to God? In other words, everybody's got a piece of the elephant, someone's got a trunk, someone's got a tail, someone's got a leg. Or do you think that it's perfectly acceptable to believe that all roads and all gods would kind of lead to the same direction?
I think people may have a different way of getting there, but eventually, they all feel that, what they're doing is because it's, if they're doing...
So what Canaanites did to the little... Hey, Mark.
No,
what
that
the
would be
Canaanites
immoral.
did to the little children.
That's absolutely immoral. That's like...
What? But Mark, with the... Here, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I really want to get this across. Because I care about you. I want you to get this. With that mentality that you just said a moment ago, which is, well, I think that eventually they'll get there. Look, then you have no right to tell me that the Canaanites, what they did was immoral. And you have no right to say that some radical Muslims who are treating their wives terribly and their children and allowing rape in some countries through their jihadist behavior.
My upbringing tells me that this is wrong. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
But why is it wrong? Mark, why is it wrong? Why is it wrong? Why is treating children in that way wrong? Starving them to death because you want to take care of a cow more than your children. Why is that wrong?
I really don't have an answer. Morally,
but I know it's wrong. Mark, you know it's wrong. You know it's wrong. You know why? Because the God from the Bible
innate.
says it's
There's
wrong.
something inside of you that's innate. Okay? Call it the spark of religion.
Your soul.
Okay? Your conscience, your soul, whatever. It's in all of us.
But everybody's got a different soul and a different opinion about morality. Okay, so what you're saying then the people who treat people terribly have a conscience and they're thinking to themselves, I better not do this. This doesn't feel right. This is going against my conscience.
No, if it was
right?
me, I would try to show them that what they're doing and what they're practicing is wrong.
You don't have a right to do that. What authority do you have, Mark, to tell them that what they're doing in their cultures is wrong?
Well, the same...
What's your authority?
The same right that a Christian minister or one who follows the ministry, who goes out and converts, who goes to areas and spreads the word of Jesus, okay? Uh-huh. So I may not be spreading the word of Jesus, but what I am spreading is my belief in morality, okay, and what I...
According to who, Mark? Your opinions? Your opinions or God's opinions?
Well, I learned that it's against, it's God's will. It's God's opinion. I'm a God-fearing person.
Very good. Now, I agree with you. It is God's opinion. It's His very worldview that torturing children is definitely wrong, right?
Right.
So now let me just ask you this question. Now that we established that it needs to come from God, which source do we know that by? How do we know that God said certain things were wrong and certain things were good? How do we know? We can't always trust our senses. Sometimes our morality is whacked, right?
Well,
you got rapists and murderers out there.
Well, children are taught by their first teachers, which are their parents. Okay, and they learn from their parents,
treat their children bad.
They learn from religious leaders what's right and what's wrong. I remember...
Which religious leader? Which ones? The ones that teach you to starve your children so they can take care of a cow and rat?
I see where you're going with this.